debt is always in the spotlight, but this is broader. You know, there's assets around it as well. There's balance sheet. So debt is just one side of the balance sheet, and usually the misconception is people are just looking at what's there in terms of debt levels. But if it's backed by assets, if it's backed by physical assets, even, you know, it's a completely different ball game. And that's the usual misconception. The other one is, you know, what is the right level of debt? I think we'll never get an answer to that. There are economists who claim that there's an absolute level, but this has been proven wrong by empirics. So I think this is one of the odd discussions we still have, that there is a right level of debt, and I think that's a misconception. Global debt hit an all-time high because there's so much demand for it, and there's also a price for issuing debt which is very attractive. So rates are low, and that's why this bonanza has been taking place, and probably will continue to quite some extent. It was a nice way out of the crisis, in particular during recession times. It was about the governments issuing, and in particular emerging markets. And there the corporate sector was very, very active in kind of stepping in and taking the opportunity of increasing debt. So that was like a remedy to the financial crisis 10 years ago. If there are signs of a repeat of 2008 and these type of things, of course, you know, this would be a devastating experience. But it very much depends, you know, how this is managed and how it evolves. What will be the center, you know? Last time it was the US housing market. The likelihood of that happening again is rather limited, given the restrictions of the US banking system at this stage. So it very much depends, and every debt crisis has particular characteristics. But if this turns out to be one which is global and the contagion goes around the world, this would be a very, very black picture we would have to picture there. Well, ideally, governments would step in when there's need for economic activity and increase debt in bad times, in recessions, but then during boom times, where we are right now, would actually reduce their debt levels. Unfortunately, politicians like to get re-elected, and therefore they tend to issue a lot of debt during recessions and still quite some sizable debt in the good times. So that's not happening, and this is always a burden in the long run. If it continues and if it proves to be unsustainable and has to reverse at some stage, this will be a heavy burden to the next generation. There are usually two ways out of it. One is inflate it away, so let inflation take care of it, so meaning devaluing the debt over some years, which is a hurtful experience because it erases a lot of purchasing power also with consumers. The other possibility, which is hardly any easier, is a straight debt cut, just write it off, and this usually also has quite some heavy consequences in terms of wealth immediately, but also, you know, how you deal with it after the debt cut and how you get the economy back to life. So there are no easy answers to that, and I think future generations will have the issue to resolve what this generation has started.